Hi, I'm Marianne, and I am going to make soap today. I got started making soap about 30 years ago, and I've been making soap for a long time now. So just usually give it out. I have sold it at times. Anyways, soap is basically lye and fat. And the way soap was discovered was years ago when there was people washing their clothes in the streams. And this was in ancient times when they did animal sacrifices up on a mountain. And when it rained, this sledge stuff would come down from the mountain and it would get into the stream coming from the animal sacrifices. And what would happen was the fat from the animal sacrifice would fall down into the ashes, which is where we get lye. We can get natural lye from the ashes, wood ashes. And that would combine and come down, and as the women were washing their clothes in the stream, they would find that their clothes got cleaner when they got closer to this sledge stuff. So what was originally intended to clean us spiritually is what led to the discovery of soap and physical cleansing. Very exciting to see. There's a lot of spiritual correlations in that, where you can see, because Jesus was the sacrifice and he provides the fat and the oil, which is just like the Holy Ghost. The Bible talks about the oil as being the Holy Spirit, and the lye from the wood sacrifice, that's like the sin. It's corrosive, it's strong, but you combine the two and you no longer have lye and fat, you now have soap and glycerin. And from the store-bought soaps, they remove the glycerin because it's a softening agent. So it's amazing because, and what happens to us when we bring our sin to the cross of Christ, we find out you cannot find that. We've become a new creation in Christ, and you can't find that sin anymore. It's gone. He's removed it from us. And that's exactly what happens in the soap. It's like a chemical reaction. You cannot find the lye in the fat anymore. It is now soap and glycerin. So what we're going to do today, you can make soap out of all different kinds of oils. So what I have done here is I have saved my beef fat, and that becomes tallow. So when I'm cooking, I'll save all the beef fat and I save it in one place, and then I clean it. You clean it by boiling it with salt and water, and you separate those. The water goes to the bottom along with the impurities. The fat comes to the top. You separate them. You try to dry it out as much as possible. You might cook it a little bit longer or put it in a frost-free freezer. And then you end up with either tallow, or you can do the same thing with pork fat and have lard. Both of them make a great soap. And so today I have saved some of my own tallow, and we will be making tallow soap today. So this is another thing I've used with my soap scraps. I save it and I add water, and this is something that I use for my laundry. So I'll take just a scrub brush, put it in that, and my husband's a landscaper, so he always comes home with filthy clothes. And so I just take some of that and scrub it, and it works great on laundry. So you'll see what we're doing here. So that's what we use to make it. These are some of the things that I've purchased. This is a scale that weighs for grams and ounces, small amounts. I have another scale here. This is a postal scale, and this is what I use to weigh the pounds. So the heavier things, I'll use this scale, and the lighter, like the lye or something, especially if I'm doing a small amount, I'll use that. These are some of the books. These are some of my favorite books. This one is by Elaine White, and you can see I've used it to where it's falling apart. But all of her recipes in here, she's got a whole bunch of different ones. Some of them use only tallow, so you can, depending on what oils you have available, what ones you can get or save. But it only makes 1 pound at a time. So you can multiply the recipe. And what I suggest doing is writing out the multiplication. So this time I've multiplied it times 4, so I'm going to be using 4 pounds of fat. And so I've multiplied everything times 4, but then I don't want that along with the recipe. Like if you can see in here, there's some things I have written down. Let me show you. Like back here, I've done, like here's times 8 and here's times 4 over here. So, but you don't want to be looking at that. So what I do is I'll write it out so that I don't have anything else. I've only got that recipe and I can't be looking at a different amount and possibly get it wrong. So I'll take the recipe, write it out, and this is all I'm dealing with now. So I'm not looking at possibly two different amounts so that I could get something wrong on that. You don't want to make a mistake in your soap. You want to be really careful. I've already done I'm going to make the bars just using some pans that I purchased just for soap making. And I put freezer paper in there. Okay, this is another book that I've used. This is a really fun book, the Complete Soap Maker. And there's one recipe in here that's really cool, and I have done it. You add whiskey, and with the addition of whiskey and sugar, it makes a clear soap, and that's really fun. So you might enjoy that. This one is also another book that's really a good one. Essentially Soap. There's a page in the back that gives you the SAP value, because there's a different SAP value for all of the different oils. And this one, if you can see here on this, so almond oil this is the SAP value for that, and it tells you how to calculate it. So if you only have, say, almond oil and kukui oil and shea butter or something like that, you can make soap depending on, just with whatever oils you have. You just have to get the SAP value correct. So it tells you how to do that, how to calculate it all out in here so that you can use whatever soap you want. And so here's our alternative oils and how to use them, chapter 12, and it tells you how to calculate it all out. So this is a great book for that. That's something I've done many times. It's really fun to be able to calculate out your own soap. If you say, oh, I've got canola oil and shea butter and something else, and so you can calculate it out, figure out how much you want to use of each one, and just go ahead and make soap. So that's really fun. So when I'm doing this, I use gloves. This is to measure the temperature. This is what I combine the lye and the water in. Now you always add the lye to the water. This is the lye I use. It's dry. Okay, and you can see, so I order it online. It's a high test quality lye. You don't want to get anything from the store or liquid lye that will probably have like shards of metal in it. You don't want that at all. You only want a pure white lye, unless you're going to make it from the ashes of your fireplace. That's a whole nother story, but you can do that. You can make your own lye from the ashes in your fireplace. You just have to, you clean it, you filter it. So you would take hardwood ashes, not softwood, so something like oak wood ashes, and you'd put it in a bucket with like a whole bunch of like sand and pine needles and different things that you could filter it through. And so you want it filtered and you want it kind of cleaned. And so you'd add the oil, you'd add the ashes and water, and then you'd pour it through that. And you need a strong enough solution to float a good egg. Now, an egg that's gone bad is going to float anyway. So you want to make sure the egg doesn't float in water, but when you add it to the lye, it floats. Then you've got a good mixture of lye. So if you're going to do it that way, that's how you could tell if you had the lye right. So, but anyways, this is the it will still make soap, and you want to get it as clean as possible, but of course it's going to be a darker colored soap, and it's not going to be something you're going to want to use as much for your hands and physical cleaning, probably. If you've made it out of you might use it for laundry or something like that. But anyway, so this is the lye we're going to use. When you add the lye, you always add it to water. You never add the water to the lye, okay? You could end up with a big mess. Don't do that. You're always going to add the lye to the water. after you've measured it correctly. You make sure you've measured, always double check, make sure you've measured the water correctly, make sure you've measured the lye correctly, and then you'll add the lye to the water. And I take it outside when I do that to make sure that I'm not breathing the fumes, because you don't want that in the house. You don't want to be breathing those fumes. So, okay, so we'll get started. This is already 4 pounds. This is tallow, and I have cleaned it. So we'll be adding that. Okay, I've gone ahead and measured everything. Now, like I say, measure it twice, so I'm gonna measure it a second time. And so you'll see that I do what I preach. So I've measured 3 cups of water. This should be 3 cups of water. So we'll do it again, just to be sure I've got it right. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it called for 3 cups of water, and this should be 9.2 ounces of lye. So I'm gonna put this on there, and that's a weight to it. So I'm gonna zero out that weight, and now this should end up 9.2 ounces. 9.2, there we go. Okay, so I've measured these twice, so I know I've got the right amount. Got 4 pounds of beef tallow. I went ahead and made that into a liquid. So this is what it looks like. It was a white color before. Now it looks like a cream color. That's my tallow that's melted now. And we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna go outside because I don't wanna be breathing the fumes. So I always combine these where it's safe outside. And it's always best, especially when you are dealing with lye, you want to be using gloves, and you want to be using eye goggles, something to protect your eyes. I've read that if that mixture should splash up into your eyes, you might not feel it, but it could literally make you go blind. So you want to be really careful with this stuff, okay? All right, here we go. So we'll combine this outdoors. Okay, so I want you to remember, you never add the water to the lye. You always add the lye to the water. That's the only safe way to do it. So we're going to take this now and just gently make sure it all gets in there. And I'm gonna stir it. And I'm doing it outdoors, so I'm not breathing the fumes. They're not getting in my house. I will immediately rinse these. And this, I'm gonna be leaving this pitcher because this immediately gets hot. When you add the lye to the water, you now have a hot mixture. This has heated up. I have here a temperature gun, and as you can see, okay, here's the temperature outdoors. It's about 66. That's 165. So you always start off with cold water. When you're adding lye to it, always start off with cold water. If you start off with warm or hot water, it could boil over. So you want to be sure you start off with cold water and add the lye to cold water. Very important, because you can see how much it heats up. 165. So we're going to add, when that gets to about 150, each recipe is a little bit different. So this one, in fact, let's go look at, I think we add it when the fat's about 150, 155. Okay, so when you add the lye to the water and it heats up, you want it in an area where you can watch it. You don't want any animals trying to drink from that. So you want to be careful and make sure you can watch it as it cools down. And after it cools to the right temperature, then you're going to be adding it to the fats. So I'm going to be adding, on this recipe, it says the fat will be 120 degrees and the lye 155. So we're not going to have to wait long for that to get down, only 10 degrees, so that we can add it. Okay, so that's almost ready. So meanwhile, I've prepared my pans. I use a butcher paper in here, and I just use bread loaf pans that I buy only for making soap. All of the things that I have for soap making, I use only for soap making. I don't use them for cooking as well. Okay? In case anything should get stuck on them. You don't want to be putting lye into your food or anything like that. And you want to be careful to wash everything and use your gloves and your goggles when you're doing that. Okay, anything that's touched the lye, you want to rinse immediately. You don't want lye on anything. You want to be really careful. If ever you're working with it and something on your hand, like if you feel anything, make sure you rinse it off, just to be sure in case any spot of it got on you. Okay, so we have cooled down the lye mixture, and that is now at 155. And this is at 120. So, and that's what this recipe says to combine them at. So we're going to go ahead and combine these two. And I'm just going to protect my eyes with glasses here. Actually, I should have the gloves on. Where are they? Here they are. Okay, you want to be really careful when you're doing this and just go ahead and get it in there quickly. Gently and quickly. And you can see a difference already. You can see already something happening. You can watch it when you're in there. What happens is it begins to thicken. And when they call it, they say it has to come to trace. And that's what they call it, coming to trace. And that means that you're getting thicker, just kind of like pudding. Okay, so one thing you can do to hasten the process is to use a blender. And this is something I purchased only for soap making. I don't use it for anything else. You're going to want to hold it down in there. You don't want to be lifting it up. You don't want it splashing. And you can see, can you see the mixture? You can watch it beginning to get thicker and change color. Can you see that? Awesome. And as you lift it up, you can see it's beginning to coat the tool here. Okay, and see how that's getting thicker? You can take it, when they say it's at trace, it looks like a pudding. You can see a drop of that on there. I take it when it's about this thick because I don't like ripples in it. I like a nice smooth finish on my soap. And so that's about where I stop with the blending. So I'll take this over and then I'm gonna get this ready to go ahead and pour. You can see how fast and easy this is. A lot depends on the different additives that you add to it, and some people will mix it by hand, but it doesn't have to take long at all. You can do soap making really fast. So to some of this, I'm going to go ahead and add some, this is anise oil, essential oil. And for this size of container, I'm going to use 2 tablespoons. And over here, I'm going to use a fragrance oil. This is gardenia. And we'll add some calendula flowers to this one too. Okay, here we go. Ooh. Got some on the outside of that paper. And I've got some extras, so I'm going to go ahead and get another pan ready really fast. I have gone ahead and evened out the pans, so we have about the same amount in each one. I went and added some more scent to this one, and I'm beginning to stir them, and you can see how it's getting even thicker still. It's more like a pudding, and you can stir it a little bit or a lot depending on how well. Sometimes just the scent that you've added is going to change the color of it, and you can have swirls in it, and things are going to change a lot. And with each bar, it's always different, and it's always fun. So it's just cool trying the different things, how a different essential oil will make a different color even in your soap. Or you can see, like, look at this one. You can see the yellows. I've added, this is just a fragrance oil. It's gardenia fragrance oil, and this one was the anise essential oil. And the essential oil is leaving a creamy soap, whereas this is beginning to turn yellow. And you can see that, and you can see how the oil even affects the soap, as far as how much it thickens or something like that. So it's just always fun. You always get to find something new with you're always learning. So that's it. What I do now is I will take these and I'll put them in blankets. So I'll show you that in just a minute here. Okay. This is, you can see I've gotten this ready. I wrap these up to help keep them warm, and then I'll leave them here overnight. To this one I've added calendula flowers. We've added some poppy seeds to our anise bar, and this one is just the gardenia scent. So I'm going to go ahead and cover these like so, and just wrap it up and try to keep these warm. And then tomorrow morning those will be hot, or they will be done, and we should be able to go ahead and cut them by tomorrow. So I'll get another blanket and cover this, and then that's done. You leave it just to keep warm and let that chemical reaction happen. So while these are being made, these are 4 different ones that I've done before. These ones right here were just pure olive oil soaps, and depending on the different scent that I added caused it to turn colors. You can see the beauty in that. This one didn't turn as much of a color, but there's a little bit of a difference in there. You can see it's just beautiful. So you'll have a lot of fun making soap. You can see this one is different. I used this whole one. This was the mold that I made those ones in, and you can see, of course, they're not perfect, but beautiful bars. They're a lot of fun. This one turned a really different. You can see here's some of the different bars, just the different colors and the different things. So have fun. You can take like the scraps like that, and while they're still pliable, you can use gloves and make them into a ball. So you can have a ball soap, and you can even put that on a rope so that you could have it hanging somewhere if you wanted. You can have a lot of fun with soap. So enjoy.